Welcome, everybody. So glad to be here. I'm just gonna share my screen, assuming you guys can see that, and I am going to get the chat open. So if you have questions at any time, I do have the chat in front of me. All right. So, just by way of background, I started out my career, I was at Goldman Sachs and then Bridgewater. And then I did a little HR research. I did coaching training and became a certified coach, and have been doing that for 8 years now. And I also did a tech MBA at NYU Stern. So, I did a ton of startup programming to get my business off the ground. And I've done coaching at a variety of organizations, including building my own coaching company. So that's a little bit of who I am. Yeah, so we are going to talk about some considerations of entrepreneurship, a little bit more about just career path exploration in general, some things I'd tell a new entrepreneur, and of course, questions. And I do have a self-reflection exercise at the end. If we want to do it, totally optional, but if we're enjoying the Q&A, we can stick with that as well. All right. So, just to dive straight in, entrepreneurship can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So the first and foremost thing is really the financials. I start with the reality is, how much time do you have on your side to be able to build something, right? And any kind of business may take a different amount of time to get off the ground and start, turning money around. But it's something you want to think about is, do I have the time and space and runway and sort of security under my belt to be able to do the initial build, and before we may make anything to pay myself with. And what resources do you need, right? Depending on the product you're trying to build or offer. Of course, different costs may be relevant there. And whether you really need, funding or fundraising, whether you need a team, whether you need inventory. I mean, right, everything has a different cost. For me with technology, we have a software platform. We were able to start very scrappy and start offering some coaching. And then when you brought in revenue that way, then we use that revenue to build the technology. So when you can be scrappy, of course you want to do that. But sometimes there's, funding heavy type businesses. So you want to think about what's really required. And if you do need funding, there's so many different ways to do that as well. So it's really important to just think about, again, if there's financial requirements and resource requirements, of course, there's the typical fundraise route. There's bootstrapping, there's grants, debt, accelerators, crowdfunding, equity, and a lot of different ways to get going. A lot of varieties of entrepreneurship, right? So you could truly like innovate and create some product or service, or you could just be defining yourself as an entrepreneur if you're a consultant or doing freelancing with a skill set that you already have. Even being a leader at an early stage company, right? You're a leader at a startup. You don't necessarily have to be the founder or CEO. And then there's entrepreneurship, right? Even at your company, building something new, a new team or a new product or something at a company that, might be a larger company. Choosing your lane, you just have to really care about what you're doing, right? If you're going to take a lot of time, effort, risk, my 2 cents is don't get started doing it unless you actually really care about the mission, whoever you're serving, how you're going about it, because it takes a ton of time, patience, resilience, and creativity, and just so many, just mental agility, right? So you really have to care about what you're doing. And testing demand. So, if you do have a current job right now, you can test out on the side of your job, try to prove that concept. How would I land my first client? Start scrappy with low cost, easy ways to build, to test the marketing and the product. I think a common pitfall of entrepreneurs is, I wait a year, I build a website, it has to be perfect. I'm sort of in stealth mode and I never really launch. Nobody knows what I'm working on. You kind of want to not do that, especially if you're testing if this is going to work, whether you're testing it on the side of a job or not. You really want to be super scrappy and just get out there as fast as possible to see if there's demand. And your product or service or offering may vary over the course of time. Maybe you start like we started offering coaching, and then that revenue funded the build of technology. So, you can vary up how you solve a problem. and what that product and service looks like. But starting small to see, are there people who need this sort of help? That's really what you want to test. Is there merit to this? Should I keep going? Is this worth my own time? Right. And then the business model on paper math, this is something you can do before you even start. How much money do I need or want to bring in? What would my product and service be? What would the pricing look like? And when you look at here's the income I want, here's the pricing, you can sort of divide that and say, how many customers would it take to create that monthly income? And then you can work backwards to say, okay, if I need, 3 to 5 clients a month, does that mean I need 15 sales calls because I'm going to convert at 30% or whatever it may be? Right. So you can sort of do that on paper math to see what your funnel looks like, what the dollars look like, and then you can see, is this feasible? Is this possible, right? Like imagine the numbers were such that you really needed like 50 leads a month or 100 leads a month in order to convert however many clients you wanted to convert. You're messing around with, okay, would I be able to source that many leads? What do I think conversion will look like? These are all assumptions and estimations, but it allows you to see what would the effort look like to bring in business, and then how much business would I support? And what would that look like from a dollars perspective? And this is a little bit more for maybe a freelancer or consultant. I mean, you could probably do this with any type of business model, but there are some business where, maybe over the course of time you can see how it scales. But if you're truly like doing freelance consulting, that kind of thing, you can really look at it as like your personal income, that you're looking to bring in. Or you could look at it as just a revenue goal and how would we meet that revenue goal and just work backwards from there. And the glamour, right? I think a lot of people just look at startups like a shiny thing when, the reality is it's a lot of hard work. It's, like I said, that mental agility, especially if you're starting your own thing, takes a lot of, persistence, resilience, creativity, patience. So don't just go after it for the wrong reasons. Really know why you're going after it. And that brings me to this slide, which is sometimes I see people who are like, I'm job searching, but I'm not getting anywhere, and I want to explore entrepreneurship, as a different way to bring in money for myself. And that could be valid. But you really want to just sort of ask yourself, like, are you really preferring a full-time role? And you're just not making progress. The job market is difficult. But if you are really searching and prefer and think you would thrive better in full time, we don't want you to just try to be an entrepreneur if that's not going to be your strong suit. So, I would seek out different job search, advice and guidance and strategies and methods and techniques. And there's ways of thriving in any pursuit, but try to pursue the one that actually resonates the most with you versus, oh, this one thing isn't working. Let me just try this other thing. You really want to know what's going to be the best fit for you and where you're going to thrive. And again, just doing it for the right reasons. And yeah, again, do you genuinely want to give this a go? And yeah, you just kind of don't want to feel like you're forced to do something. Again, I know full-time job searching is hard, but I would really just try to figure out, which lane makes sense for you, your strengths, your personality, your professional goals, your affinities, and what feels like it makes sense. And then, either route is hard, right? So you just want to figure out, which one is most worth your time, which one aligns the most, which one feels right and feels the best. But again, the pitfall, the common thing here is just like, don't just necessarily jump to entrepreneurship if the other path isn't working. Really think about which path, makes the most sense for you. So we're going to talk about career exploration more generally. And I am monitoring the chat. So what is career exploration? We're going to talk about that. I'm going to give you a framework. So this is a great way to start to think about you, who you are, just your strengths and where you align professionally and what would make the most sense for you. So function, what I mean by that is really the day-to-day responsibilities. So, what are the skills or activities that you're natural at, that you're great at, that, should make up your week? I think about it like a pie chart. If you think about a work week, you have however many hours, and usually any job is divided up into maybe 5 to 8 key slices of that pie. So what are those things that you're best at, that you really want to be doing, that you're natural at? And then, you can sort of compare that to, where do I think an entrepreneur needs to spend their time, and how do I best align? Now, an entrepreneur may not be good at everything. This is where we need to get help from team members or advisors or mentors. So you don't have to be good at everything, but you want to start to look at yourself, what you're natural at, what you're great at, and how does that align with what is an entrepreneur kind of required to be doing all day? That's the function. The content is essentially basically the industry, which is, what are those products or services or problem areas that I really care about, right? So, for example, the function, maybe you're really good at, analyzing data. And if you look at the content, you could analyze any kind of data. You could be in any sector. You could be looking into fashion or finance or education or whatever, you name it. Okay. So this is the difference between what skills am I natural at doing, and then what types of problem areas or topic areas or products or services do I want to apply that towards. And then the environment. So this is what I mean by this, is the work environment. And especially as an entrepreneur, you really want to ask yourself, like, am I thinking about joining a small team, or am I thinking about starting this by myself? Do I thrive when I work by myself? Do I need other people around me? What does that work environment look and feel like? And if you're starting your own thing, look, eventually it may grow. You may not have a team, and then eventually you grow a team. But you do want to ask yourself, how do I thrive? Because if a startup is going to require 6 to 12 months of you working on your own, and you really don't work well that way, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't do a startup, but it will tell you something about yourself. Oh, maybe I need a mentor or a peer or an accountability buddy or something like that. So just thinking about your physical environment, but also the intangibles, what does it look and feel like? And that's, another way to help you figure out just the work setting that makes the most sense for you. So again, role, industry, and culture, these are some things that, the common words that we usually hear. Okay. So I'm going to go through some common mindsets that people typically are choosing their career path, and sort of give you like a different way to think about it. And again, the reasoning for doing this is just to make sure that when you're looking into startup life or entrepreneurship life, that you are choosing it for the right reasons. So sometimes, and when we talked about job searching, sometimes people just are stressed with whatever it is they're pursuing. We want you to give yourself a sense of structure, right? So when you're looking, you want to ask yourself, what is your goal? If your goal is to, you already know you want to build your business, great. What are the steps to get there? If your goal is, I want to figure out if I want to start a business, what are your steps to explore and learn and chat with other entrepreneurs to make sure this is a path I want to go down? So I think sometimes when we feel stress out of making these decisions, we might, just sort of do something impulsively, or even not know how to act next. So just give yourself like a methodical step-by-step process to, go through that figuring it out process. Security, right? Financial security is a real reason that people choose, different careers. I always say you want to find something that is secure, but you really want to find something that you're interested in and something that you're good at. Otherwise, the money may not actually come in the end, right? So, to me, the most secure path is the one you're the best at, or the one you're the most interested in. So, we just don't want to only pick a path because it sounds secure. We have to also align with that path. Um, a lot of people are just not sure of what they can or can't do. So I always just say, learn first, understand what that path would look like, how people have done it in the past, and really just gather as much information as you can before you decide whether you can or can't. Sometimes that's the imposter syndrome, confidence. We may hold ourselves back. Just learn, 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 and you're going to be able to tackle those concerns by really just getting your questions answered, and then assess, is this feasible, or is this something I want to pursue? Our past, right? So sometimes people just feel limited only by what they've ever done. Your story is really what's going to make a difference. If you're trying to sell a service or sell a product, people, are less concerned of, the facts on paper of your resume, and more about, why are you the person doing this? Am I resonating with what you're telling me? So don't hold yourself back just because, oh, I've never done this before, right? Long term versus short term, a lot of people say, oh, what do I want to be in several decades from now? I personally like to think about mostly the short term, and I do consider, oh, where could this lead me? But really, in the short term, you get to focus on what is the best for me right now and have that kind of healthy serendipity of where could this go, right? If I feel this is the best decision for me now, then let's just see where it takes us. I think sometimes when people have that long term, vision and then work backwards, they may realize the initial next step is something I'm not interested in at all. So I like to really prioritize what would I be so excited to work on right now. Open. A lot of people say, oh, I'm open to anything. I'm open to all these different ideas. I like to say, be picky, right? Be focused, be narrow. You can still, try to say, oh, where would all my potential customers be? How would I make this applicable, as, and relevant as possible, or find the relevant use cases or find the relevant customers. But you want to be as focused, as narrow, as picky as possible with what it is you're intending to do. And that goes for job search or entrepreneurship. I think counterintuitively, people think, oh, if I'm open and pursuing so many things, I have these more volume of opportunities. But usually, when you do that, it's just more confusing, more overwhelming. So try to get really focused. And sometimes we're only aware of certain types of pathways. So it's okay to say, I'm not sure. I'm learning about what it would look like to go do this. Or, oh, I learned about this role and it just now I learned about this other thing that I never even heard of before. So just remember, you may only be aware of certain things. What can you expand your mind to see, what else exists, what else might be relevant, and just take in all that knowledge first. Um, Interviewing, this is a little more for job search, but when you are pursuing something, you don't want to think about it as this check the box thing. You really want to think about the root of who am I talking to? Why am I talking to them? Why are they talking to me? Let's get down. And again, this could go for interviews or even just landing a customer. Really thinking the strategic principle of it all versus the sort of on paper, I'm checking the box, I'm here, I'm shape shifting to be whoever they want me to be versus, here's what I have to offer. I need to go find the people that make sense for me to have that conversation with. Um, this is also a little job search focused, but a ton of people are applying, versus just exploring, right? And I think about when you're becoming a new entrepreneur, you're exploring who are my customers, what's my product, what's my service, what's going to resonate. So it's this exploration mode, that will help you find your fit. And a lot of times we look at other people out there and we're sort of judging and comparing what are these other people doing. I just always say, keep your eyes on your own paper. If somebody else is giving you information or inspiration, amazing. But if not, we can just unfollow, right? So just be wary of, where you're taking in, support, knowledge, guidance, and just who is influencing you. And this could go the other way too. Sometimes we have to have conversations with a partner or a loved one if they're nervous that are we going to go start entrepreneurship? Is that going to be okay? So, there's a lot of factors with other people in our life, whether they're positively or even negatively influencing us, and what conversations do we need to have to feel good, to keep going. And fear, this is totally normal, but I always say turn fear into learning, right? So, what questions do you have? What concerns do you have? What hesitations do you have? And you're turning those concerns into questions, questions into answers, and that information into a strategy. You may learn about entrepreneurship and realize this isn't for me. Or you may learn, oh, there's a middle ground. I can go get hired by an agency where they find the clients, but I still get to have autonomy and do my own thing. That's interesting, right? So you may learn any number of things, but take your concerns as a tool constructively to move you forward, to build knowledge and really understand what's out there and what's right for you or not. I think sometimes with fear, we get stuck in like, oh, I have these questions, that are just stunting me versus how do I let those questions fuel the progress of figuring out the next steps. Again, monitoring the chat if anyone has questions. So career exploration, my reminder here, my definition, is just to tell you there is a process of figuring out what it is you want. I know it mentions job search, but the whole concept is whether you're pursuing job search or entrepreneurship, you want to learn and reflect to figure out if this is the right path for you. So the whole point here is a lot of people start pursuing whatever that path is while they're still questioning it. So go through the moment to get yourself to the point of 100% clarity and saying, yes, I want to do this, or no, and here's why, and I feel really confident and excited about it, and then I'm going to go pursue this, right? So that's the whole point of defining this for you, is just to remember you can be in that mode, you can be in that mindset, you can get to that moment of certainty, and then you'll go forward from there. But if you're pursuing something while you're not sure if it's right for you, it's gonna kind of make you like half-ass it. It's gonna be hard to like put your full effort into it if you're not like really sure that this is the path that makes sense. um it's going to make you more efficient. It's going to make you more effective, and it's going to increase the odds that you're fulfilled once you get there. Again, this is referencing job search, but it's the same goes for pursuing a startup, right? You're going to just be a little more sure and gung ho and really ready to get scrappy and creative if you know 100% you're ready to go after it. So what is the process to getting really clear? First and foremost, you need to say to yourself, I'm in career exploration mode. I need to spend time to learn about what's out there. I need to spend time and be in that process of figuring it out, exploring, learning, and reflecting. And so step number one is reflecting on who you are. And that goes for those three-part framework that we talked about: your functional tendencies, your propensities, your affinities, your strengths, as well as those content areas of interest. And then you narrow in on your options. Maybe entrepreneurship is one option amongst others. You want to do a little bit of online research, but most importantly, you want to network. You want to chat with, could be 3 or 5 or 10 entrepreneurs out there. Maybe they're in a similar industry or not, but you want to start to ask them, what did it look like? And look, every entrepreneur, it's going to look different, their journey. But you're just trying to get ideas about what was their week like? What sort of, mentally did they have to deal with? Maybe how long did it take for them to get off the ground? What were some steps that really helped or didn't? And what did all this look like? The more you can chat with people who are in a similar space to you, obviously, the better. And that's when you really can reflect and say, okay, I feel really clear. I know what's ahead for me. I know what this journey is going to generally look like. I'm still going to make it my own. It may not be exactly what I heard from these other people, but I have a sense of what I'm getting into, and I'm ready and I'm excited, I'm informed, or I'm not, right? And it may send you to some other, path. And that's when you can start really pursuing the process, and you can go after whatever it is that you're pursuing, starting a business, and especially with the branding too, because when you go through, that exploration process, you're also going to refine, who would I be serving? Why, what would be my product or service? Do I have clarity around that? And then you're going to be able to brand your LinkedIn or your website so much easier once you figure it out. What are you even going after? But there's really a process of, do I even want to be an entrepreneur? If yes, okay, what would I really be building? And then you can sort of represent that on paper. And so if you still have options, if you're still not sure, you want to do learning and reflection, or both. So learning meaning chatting with some entrepreneurs, understanding how this could look, and reflection means self-reflection, learning about yourself and what you're like. And does this sound like it would be fitting and something, exciting for you or not, right? Like, how are you actually feeling? What are your strengths, and does this align well for you? So learning and reflection, if you do those two things, you will get to that point of feeling really clear and really, really certain. What would I tell a new entrepreneur? So, number one, it's more about soft skills than hard skills. And I've kind of been alluding to that, but say you're not great at marketing or finance or whatever it is, you can always find a mentor, an advisor, or somebody to work with you to help you with that thing. You're not going to be good at everything, but the soft skills, that mental strength, your resilience, your creativity, your patience, your just the follow through on your ability. Like, I've been doing this for 8 years, right? So, would you feel the ability to stick it out when there's ups and downs? That all those soft skills is kind of what it takes. Talking to people who have started similar businesses, we mentioned that. Talking to potential customers, right? That's going to help you feel more sure of like, oh, could I solve their problem? What are the problems they really care about? And what would this look like for me to solve it? Am I getting excited hearing from these customers, or am I not? Am I thinking, oh, you know what, they need a different solution than I thought, and I'm not interested in providing that. So we want to suspend our assumptions, and we want to do customer discovery in a way that we really understand the needs that are out there versus, oh, here's what I want to provide, but does anyone care about that? Does anyone need that? Forming your initial plan, right? Of course, we have some initial tests. Who, what model, what is this all going to look like? The pricing, who are those initial customers? A little mini, it doesn't even need to be a business plan, but an initial plan. Your calendar. So it's really important to think about your time and how are you going to really look at everything. You're going to look at the people on your team. You're going to look at operations. You're going to look at the finances. You're going to look at the marketing. You're going to do business development. You're going to build your product, offer your product. You're going to have to kind of look at a little bit of everything. So I like to sort of separate my calendar into those sections so that I can proactively protect time for each of these buckets. And again, even when you're first starting, you may say, oh, I don't have a team. But guess what? If you give yourself a little bit of time to think about people or HR, you might think about, oh, maybe I want an intern, or maybe I want to try a co-founder, or maybe I want an advisor or a peer, or an accountability buddy or anything like that. So even when you think about just people generally, you're thinking about your support system, and the resources around you. Maybe you want to explore an accelerator or a program like that. So when you think about your calendar, you're thinking about the ability to think high level of all these departments, so to say. Don't wait, start small, start today. We talked about that. Really, you'd have to be scrappy. If you're like a perfectionist, I'm not saying you can't be an entrepreneur, but you really want to get uncomfortable and just get comfortable with the discomfort of nothing is ever perfect, right? I'm constantly evolving our website and everything we're doing, and it's just always kind of a little bit of a mess, but it's like, if you're still helping people, you're always going to advance and evolve what you're offering, but it's never done, it's never perfect, and you have to launch, sooner rather than later. So you got to launch even when it's not done, it's not ready. You might have a website that just says, here's who I am, here's what I offer, get in touch. And that takes you, a few hours to get together and launch, right? That's better than, taking weeks or months to make a perfect website. Tap key contacts, right? So if you have anyone in your world, in your network who might have a good network, they might have good resources, they might be able to introduce you to somebody. Those are people you want to maybe leverage. Finding support, we talked about that, but communities, accelerators, obviously start out is wonderful, but just having people around you to support you, and identifying gaps, right? So if you're not great at something, make sure to get some support there somehow. Most entrepreneurs are not good at every single, department that they have to be in charge of. So what are those big gaps that you want to, see it in your blind spots, and just make sure that you are filling those gaps, right? Because if you're not great at the finance part, you don't want something to come back and bite you later. And so even if there's a mentor who will, pro bono chat with you once a month, just try to see around the corners, even if you can't afford much in the beginning. Just knowing yourself and where you need to fill those skill gaps. And reflection. Self-awareness is that number one skill. So how are you doing? Where do you need to improve? What's going well, what's not going well. This is why it's so hard, because you're your own boss, literally. And if there's, not great results, we have to take a hard look in that mirror and say, what do I need to adjust, and be really nimble to make adjustments as soon as tomorrow. So that self-awareness, that agility, that nimbleness, being able to pivot on a dime. And pivot doesn't mean like, oh, I changed my whole business model, but pivot could just mean, you know what, I was trying that marketing channel, it's not working. Let me try this other thing. So, the quicker you can reflect, measure, reflect, pivot, and just adjust accordingly. These are some of the skills that I think make for a good, strong entrepreneur. So that's a little bit about what I have today. And this is very much what we do here at WOKEN. And I'll make sure you guys have our information to get in touch with us. And if you want, I'm happy to do Q&A Or we could do the self-reflection exercise if you guys want. I have a few prompts that will help you figure out kind of what your strengths are, and then you could sort of self-assess. Does that feel like it's aligned with entrepreneurship or not? So we could do a quick vote, but yeah, if anybody has questions, feel free to unmute or pop them in the chat. Or if anybody wants to go through that reflection exercise, let me know, and I'm happy to do that as well with our remaining time. Anyone have thoughts, questions, anything that would be helpful to go deeper into? Are people feeling like, tell me in the chat, are people already pursuing entrepreneurship? Um, yes or no? Why don't we start there? I'd like to hear about your research process. What sources did you consider? Yeah, Emma, tell me more. When you say research, do you mean like how I was debating entrepreneurship or how I was like learning about my customers, or what sort of research do you mean? Feel free to unmute if you want. Learning about entrepreneurship and delivering this presentation. So yes, when I was learning about entrepreneurship, mainly I was doing my MBA program at NYU Stern. It was a tech MBA, so they had a ton of programs. Oh, that's okay. Oh, I hope you feel better. So yeah, basically, I was a part of a lot of startup programs on campus. They had different startup centers, and they had lots of different competitions and fellowships, and just a ton of mentor sessions where I learned the basics of customer discovery and just building your MVP and how to get your business off the ground and every topic you could think of. So I was there for a year, and I leveraged a ton of resources. I am not saying you need to do an MBA to start a business by any means, but thinking about either communities like this, websites like this, or any sort of resource accelerators, programs like that where you can just learn about starting a business. Sometimes when you're in a structured program to sort of take you from A to Z, or at least to take you from zero to one, it can be really nice. There's actually a great resource I can mention. Let me just find their website. I was part of a few incubators and accelerators as well. Let me send you guys one in the chat. This is one of the programs that I did outside of NYU. There was also the Halo incubator. So these were just a few. But there's so many out there like this. And some of these, cost money, and so you want to be wary of what you want to pay for necessarily. But for me, I did put a little bit of money, up front to start the business, right? So be very careful with programs if you have to pay for them, what is worth your time. But sometimes being in a structured thing with peers, with mentors, with sessions, like, if it gives you, especially like Tacklebox, it gives you the runway to literally build your first thing with your first idea from zero, right? So a program like that, if you're a person that benefits from structure, that can be a great way to get off the ground. Just be wary if anything, costs money. Never considered accelerators. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if you're already in an MBA, then, definitely leverage the campus if you're there. But yeah, accelerators, incubators, even competitions sometimes like have, a way of sort of teaching you and getting you to those milestones before the pitch or before the competition. So there's so many programs out there. For me, I loved the structure of things like that. It really helped me get that initial runway and sort of have like milestones and expectations. When you were part of a program that you had to pitch by the end, it pushed you to say, oh, I have to present on my progress and things like that. And I have peers around me and we can learn from each other. So, things like that did help me in the beginning. In terms of delivering this presentation, I want to make sure I'm answering your questions, Emma. Mainly, I put presentations together like this all the time. I'm usually delivering talks on just career development topics, career clarity, job search. So that's what I've been doing for 8 years. So I don't know if it's research per se, but it's really it's self-research of over the 8 years of how we've helped people to figure out their career path. So I've just learned and built up frameworks and methods that, have helped individuals to find career clarity. So that's kind of now I present on that topic. But yeah, that's kind of how I put my workshops together. But let me know if I am answering your question. Anyone else have questions that I can answer?
You also mentioned like finding a community of support, connecting with other folks who have like started businesses in the industry you're interested in, stuff like that. I'm wondering if you have particular recommendations for making those connections.
Well, so I would say there's two things here. There's like communities and groups, right? And then there's like individual people, right? So those are two different types of like good resources, and you want to do both. When you chat with those individual people, you can sort of ask them, oh, are you a part of any startup groups or entrepreneurship groups or founder groups? Whether it's an email newsletter, a Slack group, a meetup, something like that. So when you meet those individuals, ask them what they leverage, what they're a part of, and try to join those things. And in terms of the individuals, I think about this like how I would think about networking just for anyone. So you want to be really open-minded with who do I know and who do they know? And you kind of want to be unassuming of here's my network. I don't know who my network knows, right? Of course, I can search on LinkedIn and try to find, mutual connections, but you can also send an email to people in your network and say, I'm looking to meet these types of people. I'm looking to learn from them. I'm looking to set up an informational chat. Do you know anybody that's done anything like this? So sometimes being open-ended that way of like, here's people in my circle. Let me see who they may know. We often assume that we know who our network knows. If it's your best friend, oh, they would have told me, if they knew this, but no, they may not. They may not think of it until you send that email and ask and say, do you know anyone who does A, B, C, or D? And be very specific with who you're trying to meet. You can also look at alumni networks. So on LinkedIn, if you don't already know how to do that, I would find your alumni network on LinkedIn. It's great. If any of you attended undergrad, it's just an amazing resource. Usually there's hundreds of thousands of alumni of any one given university. So, that's an amazing thing to leverage. And then just LinkedIn in general, right? You might find mutual connections, secondary degree connections where you have, mutuals. So using LinkedIn as a research tool is kind of key. But those are just a few ideas. And then once you start going to these events and meetups and joining communities in your sector, in your field, you'll meet people naturally that way. And, once you're sort of you're really active in that space, once you meet people, you can say, oh, I'd love to, chat. Are you willing to share about your experience with me, etc., right? Things like that. So yeah, I mean, just pure like I don't want to say networking 101, but even if you were job searching, this is kind of very similar. It's like, how would I help you, just be open-minded about all the ways to find the right people. But that's kind of a starting point. Let me know if that helps answer your question.
Oh no, that totally does. Thanks.
Mhm. Anyone else? Thoughts, questions? Okay. Well, I'm happy to hang out if anyone else wants to chat. I'll put my LinkedIn again here, and our website. We often do coach, job seekers, but we very much have an entrepreneurship program as well. So if you want a sounding board or a coach to help you, get some momentum, just have another pair of eyes and ears in what you're building, even if you wanted we have a lot of flexible options, even if you wanted like a once a month, chat. Sometimes it's nice to get the momentum by having, a fresh perspective to keep you accountable and just keep you moving along. So please keep in touch if we can help. And we always offer a free call. So if you want to chat more about your unique situation, you can reach out and we can set up some one-on-one time.
Thank you so much, Rachel. So we just dropped a link in the chat. You can share your feedback on the workshop through the link there. And then this session was recorded, so we'll be sending out a recording to all the attendees in the next few days.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.